Dr. Alina Rodriguez pressed her palm against the cool metal wall of the medical bay, feeling the gentle vibration of the ship's engines through the hull. The sanctuary had been her home for 3 years now, a massive white vessel with red crosses, painted on every surface. Traveling between war zones to heal the wounded regardless of which side they fought for, Alina had dedicated her life to medicine after losing her parents in a pirate raid when she was 12. The memory of watching helplessly as her family died had driven her to become one of the galaxy's most skilled trauma surgeons. Now, at 32, she served as chief medical officer aboard humanity's largest hospital ship. Dr. Rodriguez, we have incoming wounded from the Vega 7 battle, called Nurse Patricia Hayes, from across the medical bay. Patricia was Elena's closest friend aboard the ship. A tough woman from the Mars colonies, who could handle any emergency with steady hands and a calm voice. Alina nodded and began preparing for another wave of casualties. The Centauri conflict. It had been raging for 18 months, with the aggressive Korath Empire pushing deeper into human space. The sanctuary followed the fighting, collecting the broken bodies that were left behind. Dr. James Morrison, the ship's elderly chief of staff, approached Alina with his usual gentle smile. Morrison had been practicing medicine for 40 years and had become like a father to Alina. His wisdom and experience had taught her that healing was about more than just repairing flesh and bone. The casualty reports show we'll be treating both human and Korath wounded again, Morrison said, reviewing the data on his tablet. Are you prepared for that? Alina had struggled at first with treating enemy soldiers, but Morrison had helped her understand that medicine transcended politics. A patient is a patient, she replied, repeating the phrase he had taught her. Pain doesn't choose sides. The first transport arrived within the hour, carrying 30 wounded humans from a destroyed frigate. Alina worked quickly, her hands moving with practiced precision as she stabilized a young pilot whose ship had been torn apart by Korath plasma cannons. The pilot couldn't have been older than 20, and he kept asking about his crewmates. You're safe now, Alina told him as she sealed the worst of his burns. Focus on healing. The second transport brought something unexpected. 12 wounded Korath soldiers, their gray skin marked with the ritual scars of their warrior caste. Alina had only treated a few Korath patients before, but she knew their basic physiology. Their blood was blue instead of red, and their hearts were located lower in their torso. But pain and fear looked the same in their yellow eyes. One of the Korath soldiers, a female with the rank markings of a lieutenant, grabbed Alina's wrist. As she worked on the soldier's shattered leg, the alien's voice was rough, speaking in broken human standard. Why you help us? The Korath asked. We are enemies. Alina met the alien's gaze steadily. Because you're hurt and I'm a doctor, that's all that matters here. The Korath lieutenant released her grip, something like confusion flickering across her features. Alina continued working, carefully setting the bones and sealing the wounds. She had learned that showing kindness to enemy soldiers sometimes had effects that extended far beyond the medical bay. Captain Sarah Chen, Sanctuary's commanding officer, visited the medical bay later that evening. Chen was a career military officer who had requested assignment to the hospital ship after losing her brother in the war. She understood both the necessity of their mission and the dangers they faced. We're getting reports of increased Korath fleet activity in this sector, Chen told Alina privately. Intel suggests they might be planning something big. Alina paused in her review of patient charts. Are we in danger? The sanctuary is clearly marked as a medical vessel. The Korath have respected hospital ship neutrality so far. Chen's expression was troubled. So far, yes. But there are rumors that the Korath military leadership is becoming more desperate. Admiral Vextar has been pushing for more aggressive tactics. Dr. Morrison overheard their conversation and joined them. In 40 years of practicing medicine in war zones, I've never seen anyone attack a hospital ship, he said firmly. It would violate every law of civilized warfare. Alina wished she could share Morrison's confidence, but something in Chun's tone worried her. That night, she found herself unable to sleep, instead walking the corridors of the sanctuary and thinking about the war. She had always focused on healing individual patients, But lately she had been reading reports about the larger conflict. The Korath Empire was vast and militaristic, controlling dozens of star systems through force and intimidation.
Yes.
Humanity's rapid expansion as a threat to their dominance had begun what they called a cleansing war, to eliminate human presence from disputed territories. What troubled Alina was how little the other galactic powers were doing to stop the Korath aggression. The Altarian Republic offered diplomatic protests but no military aid. The Centauri Federation sold weapons to both sides. The various smaller species remained neutral, afraid to anger the powerful Korath Empire. Alina had begun to realize that the galaxy operated on a simple principle. The strong did whatever they wanted, and the weak suffered in silence. It was a system that rewarded aggression and punished compassion. 3 days later, Lena's worst fears became reality. The Sanctuary was treating wounded from the Battle of Kepler Station when the Korath fleet appeared on their sensors. Captain Chen immediately broadcast their medical neutrality codes and transmitted visual confirmation of the ship's hospital markings. The response came directly from Admiral Cassetti.
Ah!
Human medical ship. You have treated our enemies and extended their ability to fight against us. You are therefore a legitimate military target. Alina felt her blood run cold as she heard those words over the ship's communication system. Morrison grabbed her arm, his face pale with shock. "Can't be serious," Morrison whispered. "No one attacks medical personnel. It's against every principle of civilized warfare." Captain Chen's voice echoed through the ship. "All hands prepare for emergency evacuation. This is not a drill." Lena ran through the medical bay, helping to prepare patients for emergency transport. The wounded humans and Korath soldiers looked at each other with mutual terror. Realizing that death made no distinction between enemies, the first missile hit the Sanctuary's engine section, sending a shockwave through the entire ship. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power failed. Alina found herself thrown against a bulkhead, her shoulders striking metal with a sharp crack. "Get the patients to the escape pods," Morrison shouted over the sound of alarms. "Alina, help me with the critical cases." Alina ignored the pain in her shoulder and began moving patients toward the evacuation areas. The Korath lieutenant she had treated earlier tried to help, supporting a wounded human soldier despite her own injuries. The second missile hit the medical bay directly. Alina woke up floating in space, surrounded by debris and bodies. Her emergency suit had automatically activated, providing her with air and protection from the vacuum. Around her, the wreckage of the Sanctuary tumbled slowly through the darkness. She could see other survivors in the distance. Some in escape pods, others floating free like herself. But there were so few of them. Sanctuary had carried over 800 people, crew, medical staff, and patients. Now, Alina could count maybe 50 survivors. Dr. Morrison was not among them. A rescue ship arrived 6 hours later, pulling Alina and the other survivors from the wreckage. As they were taken to safety, Alina stared back at the debris field that had once been her home and her calling. The galaxy's response to the attack was exactly what Alina expected: diplomatic protests, expressions of concern, and calls for investigation. That would lead nowhere. The Galactic Council passed a resolution condemning the attack, but took no action against the Korath Empire. Admiral Vextar claimed the hospital ship had been providing military intelligence to human forces. Lie that some neutral species actually seemed to believe. The Korath propaganda machine portrayed the attack as a legitimate military operation against a disguised warship. Alina sat in her recovery room at the Mars Medical Center, reading the news reports with growing anger. The galaxy was willing to let the Korath murder medical personnel without consequences. The same system that allowed the strong to prey on the weak was protecting the very criminals who had destroyed everything she cared about. Dr. Morrison was dead. Patricia Hayes was dead. Captain Chen was dead. 763 people who had dedicated their lives to healing others had been murdered. And the galaxy's response was to write stern letters. That night, Alina made a decision that would change everything. She opened her personal computer and began researching. Not medical texts this time, but military strategy, political science, and economic theory. She read about historical conflicts, studying how wars were won and lost. She analyzed the power structures that governed galactic civilization. Alina Rodriguez had spent her life learning how to heal broken bodies. Now she was going to learn how to break the system that had failed her so completely. The woman who had sworn an oath to do no harm was about to discover that sometimes the greatest service to life required the ability to destroy those who would take it away. The galaxy had taught her that the strong ruled over the weak. She was going to become strong enough to rewrite those rules forever. 6 months after the attack on the sanctuary, Alina Rodriguez walked into the offices of Human Defense Command. On Luna Station, she no longer wore the white coat of a doctor, but the dark blue uniform of a strategic analyst. The woman who had once saved lives with her hands was about to change the course of galactic history with her mind. General Marcus Webb, the head of Human Strategic Operations, looked up from his desk with curiosity. Alina had requested this meeting through official channels, but her background made her an unusual candidate for military service. Dr. Rodriguez Webb said, gesturing for her to sit. "I've read your file. Exceptional medical career survivor of the sanctuary attack. What makes you think you can help us win a war?" Alina placed a datapad on Webb's desk. "Because I've spent the last 6 months studying how we're losing it, sir. I think I understand something that our current strategy is missing." Webb activated the datapad and began scrolling through Alina's analysis. His eyebrows rose as he read her assessment of the Centauri conflict. Her evaluation was unlike anything he had seen from his staff officers. "You're suggesting that military force is secondary to economic and political pressure," Webb said. "That's an interesting theory, but the Korath Empire has superior firepower and more ships." Alina leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "Korath Empire is built on the principle that strength comes from domination. But real strength comes from being indispensable. Instead of trying to match their military power, we should make ourselves so valuable to the galaxy that attacking us becomes self-destructive." Webb studied her for a long moment. Alina had clearly changed since the hospital ship attack. Compassionate doctor was still there, but something harder had emerged alongside it, something that reminded him of the most dangerous strategists he had known. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Alina activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's economic networks. "The Korath Empire controls territory through fear, but they depend on trade with neutral species for resources they can't produce themselves. If we can control that trade, we control them." Over the following weeks, Alina worked with Webb's intelligence teams to develop what she called the neural web strategy. Instead of focusing on destroying Korath military assets, she wanted to target the economic and social connections that held their empire together. Commander Lisa Park, Webb's chief intelligence officer, became Alina's primary collaborator. Park had been skeptical at first about taking strategic advice from a former doctor, but Alina's insights quickly proved their worth. "The Korath military consumes 30% of their empire's total resources," Alina explained during one planning session. "They import critical materials from the Altarian Republic, the Vegan Trade Consortium, and even some human corporations through intermediaries." Park studied the data Alina had compiled. "You're suggesting we manipulate these trade relationships to create supply shortages?" Alina smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile she had once worn in the medical bay. This smile was cold and calculating. "I'm suggesting we give our trading partners better alternatives. Human technology has always been more advanced than what the Korath can offer. We just need to make it available to the right people at the right time." The first test of Alina's strategy came when human merchants, guided by intelligence from her network, began offering superior products to Korath trade partners at prices that undercut the Empire's own suppliers. The deals looked like normal commerce, but they were carefully designed to create dependencies. Within 3 months, several key Korath suppliers found their contracts terminated in favor of human alternatives. The Korath military began experiencing shortages of specialized components for their ships and weapons. Colonel David Kim, who commanded human special operations, brought Alina reports of the strategy's effectiveness. "Korath fleet readiness is down 15% across their forward battle groups," he said. "They're having to cannibalize parts from reserve ships To keep their frontline vessels operational, Elena nodded, already planning the next phase. Economic pressure is just the beginning. Need to undermine their political stability as well. The Korath Empire consisted of the dominant Korath species and 6 subjugated races that had been conquered over the past century. Lena had been studying the internal tensions within the empire, looking for fractures that could be exploited. Dr. Sarah Chen, a xenopsychologist who had joined Elena's growing team, provided crucial insights into alien psychology. The Korath maintained control through a combination of military force and cultural superiority complex, Chen explained. The subject species are kept in line through fear, but also through the belief that Korath dominance is inevitable. Lena saw the opportunity immediately. What if we could demonstrate that Korath dominance isn't inevitable? What if we could show these subjugated species that there are alternatives? Working through carefully cultivated contacts, Alina began spreading information about human society to the Korath Empire's subject races. The message was subtle, but powerful. Humans had built a civilization based on cooperation rather than domination, and they were willing to work with any species that shared those values. The psychological warfare campaign was combined with targeted economic incentives. Human companies began offering lucrative trade deals to worlds within the Korath Empire, but only to those that could demonstrate some degree of autonomy from central Korath control. Admiral Rebecca Hayes, who had taken command of the human fleet in this sector, watched Elena's strategy unfold with amazement. 3 months ago, the Korath were advancing on multiple fronts, she told Elena during a strategy meeting. Now they're dealing with supply shortages, labor disputes, and political unrest in their rear territories. Elena studied the tactical displays showing Korath fleet positions. They're being forced to redeploy ships from offensive operations to maintain internal security. That's exactly what we wanted. The breakthrough came when the planet Vorthon, one of the Korath empires, key industrial worlds, declared independence and requested human protection. The planet was inhabited by the Vorthani, species that had been conquered by the Korath 50 years earlier. General Webb contacted Elena immediately when the news broke. This is incredible. How did you know they would rebel? Elena's expression was satisfied, but not surprised. I've been in contact with Vorthani resistance leaders for 2 months. I've been providing them with communication equipment and strategic advice. The Independence Declaration was timed to coincide with the Korath fleet being out of position due to their supply problems. The Vorthani rebellion triggered similar movements on 3 other worlds within the Korath Empire. The Korath military found itself fighting a multi-front war against its own subjects, while struggling with equipment, shortages, and economic instability. Commander Park brought Elena intelligence reports showing the full scope of the Empire's problems. Korath military efficiency is down 35%. Wow. Their economy is contracting for the first time in decades, and now they're facing open rebellion from species that have been subjugated for generations. Elena reviewed the reports with cold satisfaction. The Korath built their empire on the principle that the strong rule the weak, for showing the galaxy that there's a different kind of strength. The final phase of Elena's strategy involved the neutral powers that had been watching the conflict from the sidelines. The Altarian Republic, the Centauri Federation, and the other major species had remained neutral because they feared Korath. Retaliation, Elena approached these powers not with military threats, but with economic opportunities, human technology, and trade relationships were offered to any nation that was willing to publicly condemn the attack on the sanctuary and support stronger protections for medical vessels. Dr. Michael Torres, Elena's liaison with the diplomatic corps, managed these delicate negotiations. The Altarian Republic is ready to join a coalition condemning Korath war crimes, he reported. The Centauri Federation is offering to host peace talks. Even some of the smaller species are calling for sanctions against the Korath Empire. Elena watched the political isolation of the Korath Empire with the same clinical precision she had once applied to surgery. Admiral Vextar thought he could attack a hospital ship without consequences. He's about to learn that some actions change everything. Within a year of Elena's strategy being implemented, the Korath Empire was facing the worst crisis in its history. Military effectiveness had collapsed due to supply shortages and political instability. Half of their subject species were in open rebellion. Their economy was failing as trade relationships shifted to favor human alternatives. The empire that had once seemed unstoppable was falling apart from within, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's true weapon wasn't superior firepower, superior intelligence. Elena Rodriguez, the doctor who had sworn to heal, had discovered that sometimes the greatest healing required cutting out the disease that threatened innocent life. The woman who had once saved individual patients was now reshaping the fate of entire civilizations. The galaxy was about to learn that attacking human medical personnel wasn't just morally wrong, it was strategically suicidal. And the architect of that lesson was just getting started. The new Galactic Order 2 years after the Sanctuary attack. Elena Rodriguez stood in the center of the newly constructed Galactic Coordination Complex on Earth. The building was a marvel of human engineering, its crystalline structure reaching toward the stars. While housing the most advanced strategic planning facility in known space, Elena wore the insignia of Galactic Coordinator, a position that hadn't existed before she created it. Around her, displays showed the current status of every major star system, trade route, and political entity in the galaxy. The information flowed through networks she had designed, giving humanity an unprecedented understanding of galactic civilization. President Sarah Martinez of the Terran Federation stood beside Elena, reviewing reports from across human space. The Koreth Empire has officially requested peace negotiations, Martinez said. Admiral Vextar has been removed from command and placed under house arrest by his own government. Elena nodded without looking away from the strategic displays. The fall of Admiral Vextar had been inevitable once his aggressive policies began destroying his own empire. The Koreth leadership had finally realized that their traditional approach to warfare was useless against an enemy who fought with economics and politics instead of weapons. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Elena's chief analyst for galactic affairs, approached with the latest intelligence reports. Walsh had been one of Elena's first recruits, a brilliant political scientist who understood how to translate Elena's strategic vision into practical policies. The Koreth subject species are forming a new confederation, Walsh reported. They're calling themselves the Free Worlds Alliance, and they've officially requested human guidance in establishing their governments. Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Free Worlds Alliance represented 6 species and 37 star systems that had thrown off Koreth domination. More importantly, they had done so using principles of cooperation and mutual benefit that Elena had helped them develop. Admiral Rebecca Hayes contacted Elena through the command center's communication system. Coordinator Rodriguez, we have confirmation that the last Koreth military units have withdrawn from human space. War is officially over. The announcement should have been cause for celebration, but Elena felt only a quiet satisfaction. The war had ended not through military victory, but through the complete transformation of the strategic landscape. The Koreth Empire still existed, but it was now a minor power struggling to maintain control over its core territories. General Webb, now Elena's military liaison, activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's new political configuration. In 2 years, we've gone from being on the defensive to being the dominant influence in galactic affairs. How did you know this would work? Elena walked to the display, studying the web of relationships that now connected human space to dozens of other star systems, because I understood something that the traditional military mindset missed. Real power doesn't come from the ability to destroy your enemies. It comes from making yourself so valuable that destroying you would be self-destructive. Terran protection protocols had been the cornerstone of Elena's strategy for reshaping galactic civilization. These protocols established absolute protection for medical vessels, but they went far beyond simple military threats. Any species that attacked human medical personnel would find themselves excluded from human trade networks, denied access to human technology, and diplomatically isolated from the growing coalition of species that had aligned themselves with human values. Dr. Amanda Foster, Elena's specialist in interspecies relations, presented the latest assessment of the protocols. Effectiveness. We now have formal protection agreements with 87 different species and political entities. Medical vessels operating under Terran protection are completely safe throughout most of known space. Alina felt a deep satisfaction knowing that no other medical personnel would suffer the fate of Dr. Morrison and the Sanctuary crew. The protocols had created a new reality where attacking healers was not just morally wrong, but practically impossible. Commander Lisa Park, now head of the Galactic Intelligence Network, brought Alina reports on the former Korath territories. The transition to independence is proceeding smoothly. The Vorthani have established a democratic government based on the human model, as the other former subject species are following similar patterns. Alina had spent months working with these species to develop governmental systems that reflected their unique cultures while incorporating human principles of cooperation and mutual benefit. The result was a new kind of galactic civilization based on voluntary association rather than conquest. President Martinez activated a communication channel to address the galaxy. Today marks the second anniversary of the attack on the hospital. Ship Sanctuary. That attack was intended to demonstrate human weakness. Instead, it revealed human strength. Alina listened to the president's speech while reviewing data from across the galaxy. Human influence now extended to over 400 star systems, not through conquest, but through economic integration and political alliance. The species that had once been neutral in the face of Korath aggression were now active partners in maintaining galactic peace. The memorial service for the Sanctuary crew was held in the center of the coordination complex. Alina stood before a holographic display showing the faces of all 763 people who had died in the attack, including Dr. Morrison, Patricia Hayes, and Captain Chen. "You taught me that medicine is about more than healing individual patients," Alina said quietly to Morrison's image. "Sometimes healing requires changing the entire system that creates the disease." Dr. Torres, who now served as Elena's advisor on galactic policy, approached her after the ceremony. "The Altarian Republic has officially joined the Terran Security Alliance. That brings our total membership to 43 major species and over 200 colony worlds." Alina nodded, already thinking about the implications. The Terran Security Alliance was ostensibly a mutual defense pact, but it had become something much more significant. It was a new form of galactic governance based on human principles, but adapted to include the diverse needs of dozens of different species. The economic integration that supported the alliance was even more important than the military agreements. Human technology, trade networks, and financial systems had become so essential to galactic civilization that most species couldn't function without them. Colonel Kim, now Director of Special Operations, brought Alina intelligence about the few remaining holdout species. The Rigelian hegemony is still trying to maintain complete independence from human influence, but their economy is struggling without access to our trade networks. Alina studied the data on Rigelian society. "Come around eventually. We're not trying to conquer them, just demonstrating that cooperation is more profitable than isolation." The transformation of galactic civilization had been so smooth that many species barely realized how much had changed. They still maintained their own governments and cultures, but they operated within a framework of human-designed institutions that made conflict increasingly difficult and cooperation increasingly profitable. Alina walked to the observation deck of the coordination complex, looking out at the Earth below and the stars beyond. The galaxy was more peaceful now than it had been in centuries. Trade flowed freely between star systems. Conflicts were resolved through arbitration rather than warfare, and the strong no longer preyed on the weak with impunity. Dr. Walsh joined her on the observation deck, carrying reports on the latest developments. "The Galactic Health Organization has been officially established. Every species in our alliance has agreed to contribute medical personnel and resources to ensure that hospital ships like the Sanctuary can operate anywhere in known space." Alina felt a deep sense of completion hearing that news. The organization would ensure that medical care was available to any species, anywhere in the galaxy, protected by the combined strength of dozens of worlds. It was the ultimate memorial to the people who had died trying to heal others. President Martinez contacted Alina through the observation deck's communication system. Alina, the Korath government has made an official request. They want to join the Terran Security Alliance. Alina wasn't surprised by the request. The Korath Empire had collapsed, but the Korath species still existed. Their new government, led by moderates who had opposed Admiral Vextar's aggressive policies, was trying to find a place in the new Galactic Order. What are the conditions? Alina asked. Full accountability for war crimes, including the sanctuary attack, reparations to the families of the victims, and acceptance of Terran protection protocols for all medical vessels in their territory. Alina considered the request carefully. The woman who had once sworn to heal all patients, regardless of which side they fought for, understood that forgiveness was sometimes as powerful as justice. Accept their application, she said finally. But they serve a probationary period under direct human oversight. As the day ended, Alina stood alone on the observation deck, reflecting on the journey that had brought her from the medical bay of a hospital ship to the center of galactic power. The attack on the sanctuary had been intended to break human resolve. Instead, it had forged a new kind of strength. The galaxy now operated under principles that Alina had helped establish: cooperation over domination, protection of the innocent, and the understanding that true power came from being indispensable, rather than merely dangerous. Dr. Morrison had taught her that healing was about more than repairing broken bodies. Alina had learned that sometimes the greatest healing required rebuilding the entire system. The woman who had once saved individual lives had transformed the fate of countless worlds. The stars looked different now than they had 2 years ago. They no longer represented a dangerous frontier where the strong preyed on the weak. They represented a community of civilizations working together under human guidance toward a more peaceful future. Alina Rodriguez had kept her oath as a healer, but she had healed more than anyone could have imagined. She had healed an entire galaxy's approach to power, conflict, and cooperation. And in doing so, she had ensured that no one would ever again attack those who dedicated their lives to saving others. The age of human leadership had begun. Built, not on conquest, but on the simple principle that some things were worth protecting, no matter the cost. The galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way, and it would never forget.